Hi, Diane. Welcome to Struggle to Strength.
Hi, Mary Beth. It's so great to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Mary Beth Simone, and I am the founder and CEO of Niche Partnership Consulting. And my business was inspired by a personal struggle. And through this platform of Struggle to Strength, my goal is to highlight the strengths that my guests have developed as a result of their struggles in hopes that it will inspire you to connect the dots between your struggles and your strengths. So, welcome, Diane. I'm so excited about what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, me too, Mary Beth.
So, we're going to focus our conversation on how the struggle of childhood domestic violence resulted in a strength in adulthood. But before we dive into that, can you share with us a little bit about your background and the work that you do today?
Oh, I'd be happy to. So I have a long, very long background in marketing. I've worked in some different various areas of marketing for probably 30 or more years. Have education in marketing as well as a master's degree. And so now I am a speaking coach at Speaking Your Brand, where I work with women professionals and entrepreneurs to help them build their thought leadership message, create their signature talk, create a bigger voice and bigger impact with the work that they do, and get on bigger stages with bigger platforms, get in boardrooms, and even potentially get in office.
That's fantastic. I love that. So, you and I first met in the summer of 2019 when we worked together on creating my signature talk for some upcoming speaking engagements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you might have just started working with Speaking Your Brand at that time.
I think so.
Yeah. Um, so, Diane, can you describe what was going on between your parents? What were the dynamics between your parents when you were growing up?
Yes. So the dynamics were not very good. My mother was the oldest of four children and the daughter of Italian immigrants, and so her parents did not speak any English. So she, of course, kind of managed the family in that regard, translating for them. And she worked and, brought money back to the family. And by the time she got married, when she met my father, she actually met my father on vacation when she was on vacation in Bermuda. He was stationed there. He was in the Navy. And she at that time was 39 years old. And I think, being that she was the daughter of Italian immigrants, the thinking was, well, eventually you have to get married. Otherwise, women didn't stay single back then. You got married and had kids. And so, I think just that was the opportunity. And then so they got married. And then shortly after that she had my sister, and then she had me at the age of 42. And then ended up moving all the way from New York, where she grew up, to Pensacola, Florida, a very small town. And I think that, that was probably really hard for her. And so she did not know anybody. She had two small children. And my father he drank a lot. He was an alcoholic. And so I think all of these things just made it incredibly difficult. And of course, being that he was an alcoholic, uh, more on the violent side than on the sort of, like, if you think of a happy drunk, he was not that. He was very aggressive and abusive. And so the dynamic between them was, I can't even imagine what it was like for my mom, but for me as a child, it was very scary. So not a good situation.
Yeah. And was she in the New York City area or in rural New York
She grew up in Brooklyn, so she
before
was in
going
the
to Florida?
city. Yeah, she grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then, so really in the city, very much a city girl, and then moved to Pensacola, which at the time, well, it's not like it's a thriving metropolis now, but it really wasn't back then. So, she moved to this town where we literally lived on a dirt road. And it wasn't even paved until I was probably, I don't know,
Yeah.
10 years old.
I can't imagine the culture shock with, having like the support of the immigrant community in New York to, being somewhere that is much more rural. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that was
So I'm
terribly
just going
difficult for
to
her.
give a shout out. Yeah. If anyone is watching us live, feel free to put any questions that you have in the comments, and Diane and I will keep an eye on them and answer them as we go along. So, considering all of that, so you were the youngest then?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what was your role in the family?
I would say the worrier. My role was to, I was the baby of the family, and I was unlike I am now. I was incredibly shy, and I just wanted to not be noticed, and I wanted to fly under the radar, and I didn't ever want to get in trouble. And I think a lot of that was based on just fear, the fear, fear of my father. And that probably instilled a lot of fear in me for just like anyone that I came into contact with. So my goal in life as a young person, as a child and a young person, was to never get in trouble for anything. So I really just wanted to be invisible. Didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be heard. Yeah. So I think my role was really just to not cause any trouble. And I think too, subconsciously, I knew my mom had a lot to deal with. And so I didn't want to add to that, so I just flew under the radar mostly.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting background considering what you do today with helping
I
women
know,
speak up.
isn't
Um,
it?
isn't it? And so I'm curious, did your friends realize what was going on, or did you ever talk to them about what was happening?
Oh, Mary Beth, that's such a great question. They didn't, not really, none of my friends knew what was going on. And I know sometimes I would allude to something about my father, and people, friends who had met him would say, well, he seems so nice. I don't know why you're, and I'm thinking, well, you don't have to live here. Like yeah, everybody's nice on the outside. It's easy to be nice to people superficially on the outside, until they see what's really going on behind closed doors. And so I don't think any of my friends ever knew. In fact, not too long ago, I was on Facebook, it was probably a few years ago, and connected with someone who I went to high school with. And we were just chit chatting back and forth. And I mentioned something about having dealt with, or I made a post or something about domestic violence as a child. And he was like, wow, I never knew that about you. So really nobody knew what was happening. And to be clear, there wasn't a lot of physical, or at least for me personally, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for my sister, but for me, there was really no physical abuse happening there, but it was witnessing, what was happening to my mom, and just I would say it was more like emotional abuse and fear that was instilled in us of him. So it was sort of that level
Yeah.
of, just being afraid and terrified all the time, but nobody really knew that was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a traumatic experience, even if you're witnessing the abuse of someone else. And I feel like when we're somewhat close in age, I feel like when at the time that we were growing up, nobody really talked about any of this kind of stuff. We just thought, well, that's private. And yeah,
Yeah, that's a really great point. You didn't talk about it. And, to be honest, so, I was born in 1966, and back in the day, I mean, women, you know, couldn't even have their own, credit until what, the 70s. So it's not like women, my mom or us as young girls really had any ability to change any of the circumstances or even be open about it. It would just that the world wasn't set up that way. Um, and to add to that, my father was in the Navy, and it was very much a situation. And I'm, again, this is no judgment. I don't know how the Navy's structured now, but I know back then it was set up such that they protected their own. And so my mom couldn't even say anything to, any commanding officers. When there was no ability to change the circumstance. Because I do remember that when friends later heard, what was going on, they'd say, well, I don't understand why your mom didn't just leave him. And I would say, well, Okay, let me explain why. It was the 70s. What were her options? She didn't have a job. Where was she going to go? There were not women's shelters. Those didn't exist. There were no options. So you didn't leave because what would you do? So yeah, nothing was talked about. And there were no resources to deal with any of those things, even if you wanted to talk about it. So it wouldn't have mattered anyway, frankly. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did all of these experiences, everything that you witnessed in your parents' relationship, affect your dating life?
oh boy. Well, I will say that my first serious boyfriend was so super nice at first. Everything started out really great, high school boyfriend. And then it soon, probably within the first, I would think I was dated him for 6.5 years. Within the first year and a half, 2 years, it turned into a very controlling and emotionally abusive relationship. Not surprisingly, of course. I mean, at the time, obviously I didn't get the connection, but I mean, that's just the cycle continues, right? And so it definitely made me feel like I didn't have any value beyond just being his girlfriend. And, certainly didn't, I was shy. Couldn't speak up, couldn't speak out for myself. And once again, not talking about it, not trying to hide what was going on. And again, no physical abuse, but very controlling, emotionally abusive, telling me I was stupid, all of the things. And so it definitely impacted me for sure.
Yeah, and now I think that we see a lot of research that that can be laying the groundwork for very serious physical abuse, if not, you know, uh, accidental murder or intentional murder, like all of that kind of thing. There may be no
Absolutely.
physical abuse that leads up to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not
So at
uncommon.
what point in your yeah, right. And at what point in your life did you start to connect those dots and see that challenge that you experienced as a young child and a young woman as a potential strength?
That's a great question. I think I started sort of realizing it as I was leaving that relationship, but really didn't really get the connections until, I mean, probably in my 40s, I really saw how, yes, it's unfortunate that I had to go through that, but also it made me very self-sufficient. It made me very open and uh willing to talk about things openly. It's why I'm kind of an open book about the things that I went through, because I think it only has control when you don't talk about it. It can only, when you leave it in the shadows, that's when it has control over you. But when you talk about it, it loses its ability to control your life. And so I think I started realizing that. And then ironically, of course, I help people create their talks where they, they use their voices, which is what I've learned how to do. So I think it was in my 40s when I really started seeing the connection between the way I grew up and who I am now, and why I feel so passionate about literally speaking and using my voice and helping other women do the same.
And you do that so well. I mean, since we have worked together over the last couple of years, I have seen you do that in action. And just knowing that you speak so openly about your past, I think empowers people who are in the Speaking Your Brand programs to be able to speak openly about our experiences that connect to our business and connect to our thought leadership.
Yeah, I hope so, because I encourage, and Carol does too. We encourage our clients to infuse some of their personal story. I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to be something you're not comfortable talking about, but we want them to be vulnerable in their talks, and we try to do the same. And so I hope that it inspires others to open up about things that can help people that they're speaking to, help them with things they're going through, or help them kind of see a different way, or feel supported, or feel that it's okay to be vulnerable.
And Diane, in what ways do you see this strength showing up in your working relationships and your close relationships?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. I think that I think that one of the things is that I feel like I have a lot of empathy for just any situations that people are going through and struggles that they're having. And so I think when in my relationships, whether it be for, with clients or with friends, I think my empathy is so strong that it helps people to feel comfortable sharing. I know even in client sessions when I'm talking to clients, it's just an ability to help them feel comfortable sharing stories. Um, not feel judged, of course, and feel okay being vulnerable. So I think that empathy, when you come from something that was a challenge and you have empathy for others and it comes through in the work that I do, I think that helps kind of other people to open up. And I like that because I think if we're all more, you know, authentic and more vulnerable, certainly there's a lot more healing to be had.
For sure. And I think that when I know for me as a speaker, when I've talked with you about, I don't know if this is worth incorporating, it's kind of that feeling of, would this be weird? And you're a great sounding board to say, no, that's not weird.
Absolutely. I'm always for including the hard stuff to the extent that my clients are comfortable talking about the hard stuff, but I just think it has such value in supporting others and in, like I said, in encouraging others to also, open up, and it just leads to so much more healing and support and just everybody helping one another. I just love that about it.
Yeah. And it just, the connection that it makes just helps to energize that talk or, whatever that event is that we're speaking at.
Mhm.
So, Diane, what tips do you have for people who need to set boundaries in their close relationships? It sounds like that was probably part of your journey with your, family of origin.
Yes, that's a really great question. It's so hard to articulate how to set boundaries because I think part of the setting of boundaries comes from like the hindsight that you have once you've gone through something. But I will say that I remember when I was probably in my 20s, early 30s, living in Virginia, and a friend of mine, she and I were invited to another girlfriend's house to do something, and I just didn't want to go. I just didn't feel like going, and so I told my girlfriend, I said, I'm not going to go, and she's like, well, you have to go. I said, I don't have to go. I just don't feel like going. I just want to have a night at home. And she said, well, aren't you afraid what she's going to think of you if you say no? I said, no, not really. I just don't want to go. So, I would say setting boundaries is about honesty, being honest, and not to the, if we're saying I don't want to go to something, you don't have to hurt someone's feelings, but we also don't have to lie when it puts us in an uncomfortable situation. So I think it's okay to state your needs and to, yes, you should think of others, but I think it's okay to think of ourselves, whether it be to protect ourselves or to give ourselves time or to, let ourselves rest or whatever the need is that we have. It's okay sometimes to put yourself first. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that, we get into this habit of, I know a lot of people do, of putting others first all the time. And that is where we wear ourselves down and we compromise ourselves and compromise our own well being. And that's not good. So I'd say, sometimes think of yourself, and it's okay to say no. And I know I'm not the first person to say this, but no is a complete sentence. It is a complete sentence. You can just say no, and you don't have to make up an excuse. I used to make up excuses as to why I didn't want to go to something or why I couldn't attend so and so. And now I just say, I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it. That's it. I don't have to give a reason or an excuse. So I think boundaries. The other thing I would say is practice it. It takes practice because it is easy to say yes to everything because then we feel like we're pleasing everyone. And then we end up suffering. So practice it and just try it. Try it on the least risky thing, an invitation to go to a networking event if you don't want to go. Practice it on that. And then over time, it becomes easier and more comfortable. And keep in mind that when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So when you say no to something, you are freeing up time to spend on something else that's probably more valuable to you, more meaningful to you, more energy giving to you, or for whatever reason, it just means more. So it's okay to say no to things.
That's excellent. I love everything that you just said, and I concur with all of that. So, what advice would you have for someone who feels like they are in an emotionally abusive
Mm.
relationship with a partner or an adult child who is still witnessing and encountering the emotional abuse from their family of origin?
Yes, and so I'll say the first caveat is I am not a trained therapist. I'm not a psychologist of any sort. I don't, that is not my wheelhouse. But I will add, definitely speak to someone professional if you can, because I wish I had discovered therapy way sooner, or that it was even, if I even knew where to go for that, because it is such a huge help to talk to a professional to know that when you just stay swirling around in your own head with the thoughts of like, I can't set boundaries, or I can't say no, or I have to put up with this, or, why did this happen? It usually isn't going to work itself out. You need to talk to someone else to kind of get it out of your head, at least as a sounding board. So I would say, you know, if you're able to seek out some sort of therapy, it is so beneficial. And there's not the stigmas that there used to be anymore. I mean, probably to some degree a little bit, but not like it used to be. So I would say if you can talk to a professional, definitely do that. But also, I would say be hopeful, and if you could be open with somebody, again, I'm not a therapist, so I know for some people struggling with any sort of domestic violence, it can be very dangerous. My situation was what it was. Everybody's in a different situation, so definitely you have to weigh that in. But I just, when I started being really open about what was going on, is when I felt more powerful over it. So again, everybody has to do what makes sense and don't put yourself in danger, but I just think talking about things takes away its power. And so for me, that talking was super helpful.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that the secrecy and the shame that keeps us from talking about it definitely gives it more power in our life. So let's switch gears for a minute and talk about your ideal client. So, who is your ideal client these days?
Oh, I love our ideal clients, Mary Beth. So our ideal clients at Speaking Your Brand are women professionals or entrepreneurs who want to have a bigger impact. They want to have a bigger voice. They're looking to kind of go from, maybe they've already done some speaking, maybe they haven't, but they're sort of at the expert level. So they're an expert in something, but they want to kind of get to the next level and be more of a thought leader. So if you're in that position, again, whether you work for a company, you have your own business, whatever it is you're doing, if you want to go from being seen as an expert to a thought leader, which is someone who has kind of a specific idea about the work that they do or the area of expertise that they're in, and they want to create a movement around that or create action around that, that is the ideal client that I work with. Is a woman who, they're usually very driven, very much goal oriented, and really want to have a huge impact with the work they do, a bigger impact than they're having just by being seen as an expert. So they want to go to the next level. And that is, I would say, who our ideal client is. Love working with them.
Yeah, and it is a pleasure to be one of your clients and one of
Oh,
Carol's clients. And I can't wait to meet you in person in April. So at the client event, yeah.
Yes, I'm so
Do you want
excited
to
about that,
talk a
Mary
little
Beth.
bit about the event?
Yeah, so we're having a retreat for our clients. And so this is for all of we've invited all of the clients that we've worked with in the past to a client retreat here in Orlando. So we're so excited to get to meet some of you lovely clients, and you, Mary Beth in particular, in person, finally, after how many years of this nonsense that we've all been going through. So we're just super excited to get a chance to meet our clients in person and also work on delivering talks and how to make your delivery better, and just getting to kind of engage with each other and connect and spend some time together. We're really truly looking forward to it. So if you want to get in on the next retreat, you got to become a client first.
That's it. That's the key. And I think after the client retreat, I think Carol's going to be on LinkedIn Live afterwards. So we'll talk a little bit
Yes.
about what that was like.
Great.
So if somebody does want to become a client, Diane, and wants to learn more about how to work with you or how to connect with you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yes. So, well, one thing you can do is email me at diane@speakingyourbrand.com. So that comes directly to me, and I will reach out and we can chat. You can also, we are constantly enrolling in our Thought Leader Academy. So if you want to get in on the next enrollment of that, you can just go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy and learn more about this Thought Leader Academy. You fill out an application and we can set up a Zoom chat to talk about, what your goals are, if it's a good fit for you, and then we can go from there. So those are 2 ways to get in touch with me and work with me. Would love to work with you.
That's awesome. And I will put those links in the comments to make it easy for anyone who wants to connect with you.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Diane. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure that it is going to inspire people to rise above whatever challenges, if they've had similar challenges, and to see the strengths that they have developed as a result of those challenges from childhood. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth, for inviting me. I truly enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope it is inspiring to others. So,
All right. Okay, that's it. And we will see you next time.
bye.